Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. One of cricket's foremost voices, the legendary former Windies pacer, Michael Holding, believes education is the best way to undo innate racial prejudice built on the concept of white supremacy. Speaking moments before play started on day one of the first test between West Indies and England at the Aegis Bowl in Southampton, Holding said, "Without this kind of education, the need for blacks to protest against racial injustice will endure." Holding's comments, delivered with raw emotion, have gone viral on social media.
How did you feel speaking down the barrel of a camera about this subject?
Well, I obviously didn't get as emotional as Ebony because, as I said in that video, I didn't really experience a great deal of that as a young man growing up in Jamaica, perhaps because I wasn't in that society or mixing with people that would have shown me that racism. But what I want to expand on, though, Wardy, is what I said about education. Education is important unless we also want to continue living the life that we are living and continue just having demonstrations every now and again and a few people saying a few things. And when I say education, I mean going back in history. What people need to understand is that this thing stems from a long time ago, hundreds of years ago. The dehumanization of the black race is where it started. And people will tell you, oh, that's a long time ago, get over it. No, you don't get over things like that. And the society has not gotten over something like that. I'll skip all the gap between those long years ago and make one point and then go backward. That lady in the Central Park in New York, Amy Cooper, I think is her name. If she did not have in her DNA the thought process that she was white, this man is black. If I call a police officer, 9 times out of 10 he's going to be white. I'm going to be considered right immediately. The black guy will have to prove that he's not guilty. And by the time he proves that he's not guilty, he might be dead. She had that in her mind from day one. That is why she said and did what she did. How do you get rid of that in the society? By educating both sides, black and white. I hear people talking about brainwashing. I didn't quite understand as a young man what brainwashing meant. I now understand what brainwashing meant, what it means. We have been brainwashed, and not just black people. White people have been brainwashed in different ways. I go back many years. Think about religion. You and I are supposed to be Christians. I'm not really a very holy person, not a very religious person, but that's what we were taught. Look at Jesus Christ, the image that they give you of Jesus Christ. Pale skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. Where Jesus came from, who in that part of the world looks that way? But again, that's the brainwashing to show you this is what perfection is. This is what the image of perfection is. If you look at any plays of those days, Judas, who betrayed Jesus, he's a black man. Again, brainwashing people into think, oh, he's a black man. He's the bad man. Go through history, Wardy. These lights that are shining on us. You can tell me who invented the light bulb, right? Thomas Edison, right? Everybody knows Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Thomas Edison invented a light bulb with a paper filament. It burnt out in no time at all. Can you tell me who invented the filament that makes these lights shine throughout? Nobody knows, because he's a black man. It was not taught in schools. Louis Howard Latimer invented the carbon filament to allow lights to continuously shine. Who knows that? Everything should be taught. When you go back through the schooling as a young man, I remember my school days. I was never taught anything good about black people. And you cannot have a society that is brought up like that, both white and black, that only teach what's convenient to the teacher. History is written by the conqueror, not by those that are conquered. History is written by the people who do the harm, not by the people who get harmed. And we need to go back and teach both sides of history. And until we do that and educate the entire human race, this thing will not stop. They keep on telling me there's nothing called white privilege. Give me a break. I don't see any white people going into a store on Oxford Street and being followed. A black man walks in, somebody is following him everywhere he goes. That is basic white privilege. Whether that white person went in to rob the place or not is not going to be thought of that way. And things like that have to change.
Michael Holding has stayed up late in England to speak with us, and we join him now. Mikey, welcome.
Hi, how are you? Hope everybody in GA and around the Caribbean are in good spirits.
We're good, we're good. Some really strong sentiments coming from you today before the first ball was bowled. I mean, you stressed the point of education, and that is something that definitely stood with me. I mean, I want to ask you about, you know, how hard has it been for you, and how have you, planned to continue pushing this cause forward in order to create some sort of change for the younger ones that have to deal with this maybe when we're gone?
Well, to be honest, as I said, in that video and in the chat afterwards, it wasn't that difficult for me as far as the racism that I face was concerned, because growing up in Jamaica as a young man, I had my friends, this society and the area that I lived, we didn't really have too many problems with that. I was a little boy, so I wasn't going where I would face racism.
Yeah.
My first incidence of racism was when I was 21 years old, when I left Jamaica and went down to Australia. And then, of course, the following year when I went to England. And as I said then, I didn't take it as anything that would disturb me. I just thought to myself, well, these people have a problem. I won't be here very long. I'll just deal with it and leave and go back home. It wasn't until after I started going to England on a regular basis and meeting West Indians and spending a lot of time with West Indians in England that I recognized how disastrous it was for them and the effect that it had on their lives. And that's the point at which I thought, no, this can't work. I can't just be so selfish and think I don't live it, so I don't have to deal with it. And that is when I started to think more about it. And of course, I'm extremely happy that Sky have decided that with their voice, they're going to take some active part also in this BLM movement. And of course, they gave me the platform to do that video, Ebony, Rainford, Brent, and myself, to do the video, and gave us an opportunity again this morning to talk about it. And education is the only way out. As I said, we have been brainwashed. Whites and blacks have been brainwashed. Both sides of the coin have been brainwashed into thinking whites that they are perfect and blacks that there's something wrong with us. Everything good is white and everything bad is black. And we need to educate people and teach them of both sides of history. As I made the point about Thomas Edison and the light bulb. Nobody talks about the black man who made the carbon filament because he was pushed out. His history is written out of history. There are so many black people of prominence that have been written out of history. I can give you many examples. The Lone Ranger, it's supposed to be a fictional character. But that fictional character was based on a black man called Bass Reeves, who was the first black U.S. Deputy Marshal who went into the indigenous people's country and caught outlaws. They tell you the Lone Ranger is a white man with a black mask. Because they just figured black people are not supposed to be shown to be any good. And that has to stop.
Well, Mikey, now that the discussion has come up, and we are talking about it way more, the Black Lives Matter movement has, come on stream, and people are more aware of the issue at hand. Do you see, changes coming to the forefront? When we spoke to Dwight York, he spoke about, just more black people being in managerial positions and all these different things. Do you see it, actually getting progress, making progress?
I think progress will be made. I think this time around, it is being taken a lot more seriously. What happened in the United States, everyone has saw it. It was live on video, people saw it. And people were disgusted. Everyone, not just black people were disgusted. White people were disgusted, and especially the young white people were disgusted at what they saw. And they decided that this just cannot continue. But the most important thing is not just the people who took to the streets. The most important thing is the corporations, the big corporations who are willing to put their weight and their money behind the cause. Because they could have just sat back, as we have seen on so many occasions in the past, and just wait for things to blow over.
This time, they themselves have also said enough is enough, and they're putting their money and their weight behind the cause. And I would hope that this is not just a 2-month or a 3-month thing. And I know the company that I work for, they have committed £30 million to the campaign. Exactly how they're going to spend that money, I don't know. But obviously, they'll target what they need to target. And it will make a difference if big corporations get behind it.
Yeah. Mike, before we talk a little bit more about what you actually did this morning on Sky Television, are you aware of the colossal mileage and traction that your 4 minutes plus presentation has had globally?
Well, I've heard a lot of things, Lance, because as you know, I don't do social media, but people keep on sending me things that they say it's on Instagram or on Twitter or whatever. And I've had messages from people all over the world, even from Kenya, South Africa, Australia, obviously here in England, in the Caribbean, India. I've had messages from all sorts of people, and people basically thanking me for coming out and speaking up, because not too many people have the platform on which they can speak out. And as I said, Sky, before this morning, told me exactly what they wanted to do, recorded the video with Ebony and myself, and we edited it and did exactly what we wanted to come out on that video. And then the opportunity to expand on it came this morning when there was rain. There was always going to be an opportunity to expand, because the plan was to do it at lunchtime where you had a break. But with the rain, we had even more time to expand on it.
Yeah.
And you know, if it makes a difference, I'm hoping it does, that would be great.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that, because we know how television production is, Mike, and you know, you have a running order, and you're supposed to talk for 90 seconds or 2 minutes or so. You spoke for 4 minutes and 37 seconds, and your co-presenters just stood there, hanging on to your every word. Was your presentation always scheduled to be 4 minutes and 37 seconds?
We had no timing in our lands. We had no timing on it, because as you saw, there was no cricket. There was rain. I can speak on this subject for hours. I can tell you, I can give you many more examples of blacks being written out of history. Many examples. But I didn't want to take over the program. And when you say 4 minutes and whatever seconds, that's still half the time that man had on the George Floyd's neck.
That's
half
right.
the time. So you double that, and the guy's knee is still on his neck.
Yeah, well said, Mike. As I said, the story has gone viral, and we have seen many sports personalities and people from all walks of life commenting on what you did this morning. You mentioned earlier on about your early exposure to racism and so on, and as you got older and as you started to tour more often, you had to face it head on, which, as you said, as a young man, you probably didn't bargain for. As a player, while you were a player, looking back now to those days, do you think the issue has escalated? Do you think there is any improvement at all over the decades since you've stopped playing?
I wouldn't know if it has escalated, because again, as I said, I took a very selfish view of those days. I remember, though, standing outside the Lords one day with some West Indians. I think it might have been 80 or 84. Because we were staying at the hotel right beside Lords, and I was out there with the guys having a chat and a laugh and that. It started to get dark, and they said, "Listen, Mikey, you need to go to bed. We're going to go home." And there was a taxi coming towards us, and by the time, as I said, there it started to get dark. The big orange light on the top of the taxi was shining brightly. So the guys stepped out in the road. One of them stepped out and started to lift his hand to put out his hand to call the taxi, and the taxi driver just turned the light off. And when he passed us on the corner, he turned it back on and continued down the road. So this thing has been going on for a long time. I would think, Lance, that things are improving, because you see less and less incidents. But when you have institutionalized racism, and when you have racism that is so deep in the society, you don't have to see it. It is there. As you know, Ebony spoke about the people doing CVs, and people getting CVs and seeing certain names on the CVs, and they think, oh, this name is not an English name. This person is probably a black person or a non-English person. And the CV just pushed to the bottom of the pile. You don't see that. Nobody's in your face showing you that, but it happens. And that is what we need to get rid of. And that is why I keep on stressing society. People can always talk about we need more black footballers, we need more black cricketers, black coaches, whatever. But unless the society itself changes, you'll have the institutionalized racism and the systemic racism continuing, and people will continue to have it in their minds without even being actively racist and still be able to act on it. And we need to get rid of that.
Well, Mikey, basically you're calling for a change in the mindset of the people, you know, actually trying to say we need to reprogram them again to see things a different way. And that will definitely take a lot of work. You know, when we look into the future, how far from now, like, you know, how far are we away from getting this change in somebody's mindset?
It's all about education, as I said. You cannot change people's thinking unless they are educated and they know everything that they need to know. Stop wiping out black history. Get the white folks, the black folks to understand that there are both sides to every coin. It's not just the white people that have invented things. It's not just black people who commit crime. We have things on both sides, and people need to learn that and understand that. They have had some movies about black achievements. Nobody knew that when the first lunar craft took off, that there was black women doing the calculations. Before they had computers. They had a movie about it, and people didn't know about that. The other occasion you see something like that coming out. People didn't know about that, but it's not taught in schools. You would never learn about that in schools. All you learn in schools is what the white people have done, and you only learn the good things that they have done. You don't hear about the bad things. They tell you Christopher Columbus was one of the greatest explorers. They don't tell you that Christopher Columbus went to Hispaniola and killed off every native person there by overworking them, and if they didn't work hard enough, you'd cut off their hands. You need to know everything. You need to know everything so that people's mindset can change. As I said this morning, you have black kids growing up and thinking to themselves, I'm not as good as that white kid. And it cannot work like that. There's another study that was done, another experiment. You know, I do a lot of research in all this thing here. Another study that was done, an experiment in a classroom, a white teacher with white kids, and she recognized that there was racism in the world and that her classroom, all white, they had racist tendencies towards black kids. And she herself took it upon herself and said, listen, all those with blue eyes, today you're going to be sitting at the back of the class. The brown eyes coming to the front. And she treated them differently. And after a while, you could see the kids behaving differently. The ones that she gave preferential treatment got better marks in school. The ones that did not get that preferential treatment got worse marks. And at the end of the semester, she called them together and said, why did you think that this happened? And the kids that got the preferential treatment said, because you treated us so well, we felt good, we felt as if we were of worth. And the ones that did not get preferential treatment, we felt left out. It's the same thing happening in our society with black kids. There's another study, I can go on this subject for hours here. There's another study that was done in the United States of America with black teachers and black kids. The black teachers were a lot more stringent on black kids, demanding more from them, getting them to do much harder work. And you know why? Because those black teachers had been through life and knew what it took to be a success. They knew the black kids would be facing a lot more problems than the white kids when they left school. So they tried to prepare them for what they're going to face.
Mike,
things like that have to stop.
Mike, we want to congratulate you once again for the riveting presentation you had on global television this morning. It certainly has touched a lot of tones and moved a lot of people. We have a packed cricket-heavy program today. You may be interested to know that we'll be talking to Dave Cameron about his ICC president or chairmanship bid. I know you're not a huge fan of him. In 15 seconds, Mike, any thoughts on Cameron going for ICC chair?
I don't even have 15 seconds to waste, lads.
Okay, Mike, it's good talking to you as usual.
Take care, all the best.
Michael Holding. Documented he's not a huge fan of Dave Cameron.
Right.
And Cameron speaks to us on the show later on.
Looking forward to that
he
as well.
goes for the ICC chair. We also have some comments given to us by Ricky Skerritt, the CWI president,
Yes.
because we had approached him to be a part of this discussion as well. We go to break, back with more in a moment.